Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So just like we did with the defects, transferring them from a Word file to a defect management tool, in this case Jira, we're going to be doing the same thing with the test cases. So you will remember that we had a video prior to writing up defects in a Word file where we did the same with the test cases. So we wrote the exact structure of a test case, explored it on some examples, and then transferred it to an Excel file so that you can see that you can, in a very versatile way, manage and get creative in regards to your test structure, so like how you organize your test cases, etc. And I did mention in that video that it's kind of like not very user friendly, and there are like better tools to do that, just as you saw with the defect creation in Jira. And in this video we're going to be exploring exactly that. So a test case management tool which is called XRay, but there are a bunch of alternatives to it which we'll discuss later. Which allows you to create test cases in Jira. It is a plugin for Jira essentially, so allows you to create test cases there, to manage them, add, remove, edit, etc., and to execute those test cases, and then to produce reports off the back of those test case executions, which provide meaningful insight into the state of the quality of the applications that you're working on or you're testing. So without further ado, let's dive right into the test case creation, and at the end of the video what we'll do is we'll just quickly discuss different features of XRay, but not in too much detail. I'll leave some links in the description of the video so you can carry on later on, and what are some alternatives to XRay, and how are they essentially different in many cases. Awesome, stay tuned and let's look into it. Alright, so first of all, just to remember, this is the test case that we're going to be transferring to XRay now and to Jira. It's basically a very basic test case which we created earlier to input google.com in the address bar of the browser, hit enter and get redirected. Make sure that you get redirected to the Google search page with the Google logo and the search bar. We've added some steps, etc., but you'd remember this from the earlier video. Right, now if you go to Jira, which should be already set up for you if you follow the previous videos, then you will be able to, so first of all, you're not going to be seeing XRay in the beginning by default, so you'd have to install it. I'm not going to cover it in this video, but I'll show you where to find and how to install it. It should be, just how to hit the install button, but it should be fairly quick for you to do it on your own. So you will come here in the search field, you go to apps, new apps, find new apps, and in here search XRay, hit enter. This thing will show up in here. This is the XRay plugin for Jira. In my case, it says edit already in here, but in your case, you're going to have to click install somewhere here and then follow fairly simple steps on a wizard, which will get the XRay application set up and the basic configurations done for you. And that should be it. I'm just not doing it in this video to save some time, but it should be very quick. And just in case, I will also leave a link in the description of the video so that you can, in case you get lost, you can see how exactly it's getting installed. So cool. But once you do that, and once XRay is configured for your Jira instance, your Jira project, so let's go to our general issues view. So I'm going to go to filters, advanced issue search. In this case, there will be no issue set up because I've deleted everything and I've just kept it clean so that we can explore the test case creation. And once you hit create in here in Jira, after you've configured XRay, you should be able to see new issue types added in here, new ticket types. So test, test set, test plan, test execution, precondition. This is what comes by default. And today we're going to focus on two of the issue types specifically, which will be the test and test execution. But I will leave a link in the description of the video for you guys to explore the whole set of XRay issue types and how, in what versatile ways it can be used. I'll quickly touch on this, but we're not going to go through them too deep right now. Cool. So in here, you select a test, which is an issue type, which is the very basic building block. It's your test case, like consider it one kind of page in your Word file if you're using one page per one test case. And we're just going to start by bringing everything we've got in here in the Word file to the XRay issue type. So the summary first, and then the description field in here. We're not going to use it. Jira, I think with this new view, Jira has recently had an upgrade, and in this new view, it still doesn't allow you to add test steps in this create view, like new issue view. but I'll show you in a few seconds where you can add the steps. So here you can just use it or not use it as some freestyle text area, or not use it at all, skip altogether. Environment, if you have some information you will edit, like the URL of the test environment that you're using, or any other information related to the test environment itself that you're testing in, and then some other things which we're going to just leave for now. If you've gone through the Jira tutorial, you should know that there is a bunch of fields which are configurable, but we're going to hit create in here, and this will create our first test case, TP26, and you can see the ID in here. If I click on it, it opens in a separate view. And you can also see it if you search for this. And if I were to create more test cases like this, so like test case 2, and hit create, it will also appear in here. This is exactly as any other issue type management in Jira, which you already covered. But for now, for this test case here, you can already see that there is some other new fields added. This is basically XRay managing this issue type. And in here, you can see there is test details tab where you can add steps. And it says there are no steps in here, which is clear because we haven't defined any. So we're going to hit add step, new, open up our Word file again, and we're going to bring the steps. So we want to break it down a little bit for the sake of this exercise, so you can see that you can add a bunch of different steps. And this will sound a bit primitive, but you'll get the idea that you can break down complex test cases into smaller ones. So I'm going to use this open a browser as one step, maybe bring also this one in here to make it a bit shorter. So we're going to say open a browser, click on the address bar, yeah, and click on the address bar. Then data, we're going to skip it for now. We don't want to add any data in here. You can leave it blank, or I'm just going to write NA in here, not applicable. And then the expected result is what of this step? We haven't written it explicitly because this was kind of a combined test case, but we can write it now. So when we open the browser and click on the address bar, we want to make sure that the browser is opened and the cursor is clicking on the address bar waiting for input. Again, this is very primitive, but this is just for the demonstration of it. So once you hit create, it will nicely create your first step of this test case in this form. And now we want to add another step in here where we'll bring these two steps, let's say, just to break down in two smaller steps. So I'm just going to say type google.com and press enter. And press the enter key on your keyboard. And data, for now, let's leave this blank, but this, I'm going to say, we will do this in a few seconds, because first I will show you the basic way of doing it, and then I'll show you how you can get creative with the data field in here. So the expected result is already our overall expected result, which we'll paste again in here. So after we type google.com and press enter, we want to make sure that the Google search page appears with the Google logo and a search bar where the user can enter text. And we hit create in here. Right, there you go. So that's now set up as well. And you remember that we said that you could iterate, right? You could use, so let's say you want to test a bunch of different URLs to make sure that they all take you to their landing pages. Yeah, in this case, the landing page of the Google would be the search bar with the Google logo, but let's say you type facebook.com where you expect to go to the login page, or gmail.com where you go to the login page of Gmail, etc. So what you could do in here is you could just change the text by saying type the URLs in the data field to the address bar of the browser and press the enter key. Well, actually, we are on the address bar, so I'm going to skip this to not make it redundant. From the data field, and press enter key on keyboard after each URL. And here in the data field now, you can just say URL1 google.com, URL2 facebook.com, URL3 gmail.com. Cool. And the expected result in this case would not be specific to Google, but would be to make sure that the landing page or the first page, whatever it is, appears. The landing page, let's make it clear, the landing page of each of the websites appears, and that's it, and hit save. So this way you can iterate through your URLs by adding them to the data field instead of having to create new test cases which will have the exact same steps but for different websites. All right, so now you have your test case created and you need a way to execute it. For that, another issue type in here in XRay for Jira is called a test execution. You can either create it from this view, from create new issue view, or you could create it from, you can create it from this view and then add a bunch of test cases to this test execution, or you could even directly create it from here. So if you go from your test case view, so if you go to the test runs tab of your newly created test case and hit new test execution, then you should be able to create a test execution for this specific test case. See, it says ad hoc execution for TP26. I'm going to rename this by calling it something like landing pages testing, landing pages test execution. You can get as creative as you want with your structures, but in this case I'm going to name it like this. And then a bunch of other fields, like you can add a fixed version. I've pre-created at some environment, and then you hit create, and then this will create a test execution for you now, and it will directly take you to the test execution view of this test case. So let me just take a step back in here. If you look at the test execution itself, it will contain the test case that we have created. This is the newly created test execution. It will create a test case that we have added in here, and it will allow you to execute it by pressing this play button. It's just that from that view, it automatically made all of these steps for us and directly took us to the execution view. So I hit play, and then I'm now in the execution view. So I read the steps, action, expected result, and let's say this passed, or action, expected result, and let's say this also passed. Now this whole test case will automatically be set to passed, like this execution status in here. And if I go back to the test execution view in here, you will see that the test case has passed as well in here, and it will show you as part of the rest of the data in here. And you can add more tests to this. So you don't necessarily need to have one test execution per one test case. If for some reason you need to have that structure, you can also have that. But normally you would add a bunch of test cases to this. So let's say you have a test execution which is called a bunch of, or I don't know, it's called health checks or smoke test or basic tests or something that has a meaning of a group of test cases. You could group them like that and add a bunch of more test cases. So I can just hit existing tests from add test and add our test case 2. Remember, we just created. And it will also appear here, but now this will show to do because obviously we haven't executed yet. It was just a dummy test case with no test cases in it, test steps in it. So let's assume our test case, which we just created, has failed on some of the steps. So let's say we're here, we typed the URLs, and suddenly facebook.com didn't load and threw some error message at us and didn't meet our expected result. We would hit the red one in here, which would turn this to fail. By the way, this is also customizable, but this is the basic configuration of the types of statuses you can have. So you can fail this test case, and now you need to somehow explain what happened. How did this test case exactly fail? Because you can't be altering this and you don't have an observed result in here. So what should you do? Exactly, you should be raising a defect in here, or a bug. So you hit defects, create defect. This will automatically populate the steps for you in here. And if you want to change this format, you can clearly just delete this and use any format you want. But for now, I'm going to leave it because the steps are pretty clear in here. And I'm just going to add 2 fields in here. Observed result, which would be the most important part of it because you want to actually explain what happened. And then expected result, even though you have it in here, if you see, like you have it in here, but I would want to make it like explicit. So I'm just gonna edit separately in here. So the observed result, let's say, is gonna be that facebook.com through an error message, or returned an error message to be more accurate, return an error message instead of loading the landing page. And you can, this is already a defect view, so if you watched the previous video, you should know that you can add a bunch of information to defect, add an attachment, add all the necessary details. Like in the observed result, you can say that 404 error was returned, for example, or whatever else. Or you can add a video, anything, any supporting information. But for now, I'm just going to keep it simple. And then the expected result would be that facebook.com should have loaded, or should have presented the login page after entering URL to the browser address line and hitting enter. It's very primitive and too kind of detailed, but still, just so that you get the sense of it. And now if we hit create, you can again add a bunch of information here. I'm going to skip that for now. Oops, we forgot the summary. So I'm going to add the summary according to our best practice, which is, if you remember, problem, action, and location. So we're going to say 404 error message is received when trying to load the facebook.com URL in Chrome browser, for example. And so this is your problem, this is your action, this is your location essentially. And then I'm going to hit create. And now you'll see that the defect is added to this. You can actually return to the test execution view, and you will show how helpful this is, in a sense that it will show already the link to the defect that we just created in Jira. So this is now not the XRay issue type, but a Jira bug issue type. And it shows it nicely in here with the summary. So it's already clear what kind of defects we have in what statuses under this test execution. And it will also show it to you per test case. So if you had different defects, multiple defects per one test case, you would also be able to see at least their IDs and then click on them and manage them. So as you can see, this provides a lot more opportunities for you to present and manage information in form of test cases than a Word file would do. And you can assign tickets, you can label them like test cases, test executions, whatever. You can add a bunch of things to it. You can use a bunch more digitally than you would be able to do it in a, oops, sorry, my Outlook got opened up, than you can do by just using a Word file. But in a nutshell, everything is the same. So the whole information that we had in here, we also presented in here. The only difference is the experience of interacting with these test cases and how much faster you can be with that. Alright, so I hope the demonstration was helpful to you guys to understand that, just like with defects, with test cases as well, all that matters is for you to know what really is important when creating a test case, when writing it up, what makes a quality test case, how does it turn reusable for different types of testers and people with different kind of backgrounds, etc. And then the tool is just an extension. It's essentially just a means to make your life easier, to allow you to do better manipulations with those test cases, but it will never block you to not have a tool. It will just make your life harder and the overall process a bit longer. And XRay is just one of those tools that can help you in that journey of creating, managing your test cases and executing continuously to improve the quality of your projects. But there are others, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. So I can give you just a few names. You can research at your free time if you would like, and I will also leave some links in the description of the video. There's like Zephyr, TestRail, XRay is one of them. There are some older tools like TestRail. Microsoft has its own test case management stack, etc. And maybe there will be more that are just, you know, like appearing these days. And essentially, they will have differences in terms of integration with other tools, in terms of the interfaces, in terms of like how the structure, like the infrastructure within the test case management tool is set up. But one thing that will be common through all of them is the following. They all need to be able to provide you, it's actually three things. They all need to be able to provide you with some sort of tooling to be able to create test cases, to be able to run or execute those test cases, and to be able to provide or get some insight in form of reports from those executions. So like how many test cases have failed, how many test cases have passed, what are the defects that you have found, like numbers of defects per failed test cases, etc., different KPIs. I will not go deep into any test case management tool during this tutorial series in general. I will just leave a link in the description of this video which will allow you to at least get very good knowledge about X-ray. I mean, the work is already done and it's quite intuitive if you watch somebody else's videos. I just don't have to repeat the effort. But please, if you will find out later on in your early careers or even now while watching this tutorial series that you would like to see a deeper kind of demo of different features of X-ray done by me, and maybe to share my experience in terms of the best practices, what worked and didn't work for me, then please leave some comments in the description of the videos, and I will make sure to follow up, and we can always create a separate video outside of the natural chronology of this video tutorial series. Alright, so this video comes to an end, guys. We're pretty much done, I would say. Like, one more video that we will do next time will be around test planning, and you don't have to be doing test planning on your own as a junior test engineer at any company, but the more you know about it, the better tester you will be. And then we will proceed to more kind of employment related aspects, creating your CV, preparing yourself for an interview, actually the process of the interview, what questions to expect, etc. So you're totally prepared and you can start applying for your next job. Awesome, stay tuned and I'll be seeing you next week, guys.